And coming up on the wrap tonight, Rand Paul gets ready to jump into the presidential race. Is he a candidate who should be taken seriously? Congress is already fed up with the president over the Iran deal. And Rolling Stone retracts its entire UVA fraternity rape hit piece, but the damage already done. Plus our potlucks and yay or nay. This is the Daily Wrap, live from New York City. Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Joe Concha, fighting SARS or some sort of Ebola or some sort of cold, so you got to put up with this.
If you keel over, we'll
That's
catch
why I'm
you.
sitting this far away from you.
Well done, John. Yeah, I sound like the sisters on The Simpsons, so bear with me, please. Joining me tonight, as usual, is my co-host, Forbes.com columnist, Sirius XM host, and the former pitching coach for the San Diego Padres. Wow, is that true?
LA Dodgers, LA Dodgers.
Dodgers, sorry.
And why am I sitting this close to you? I want to know.
Right down Route 5. Rick Ungar also, not only does she add brains to the panel, but the beauty as well. Heather Hansen is here. I didn't write that.
I thought you meant
And
fun.
finally, Newsmax contributor and writer for National Review Online, John Fund. Okay, let's go to the Daily Download. And we're about to hear from Mr. Rand Paul in just a moment, who is our top story. Do we have some sound from Mr. Paul?
There's probably few candidates for 2016 that are more interesting than Rand Paul.
Rand Paul has been the most consistently principled person talking about issues.
The senator for Kentucky might just be the candidate who ends up winning this thing.
He's got the organization on the ground right now. He's in all 50 states. He's got young folks gravitating towards him. He's got African Americans taking a pause and looking at him.
To fix Washington, we can't have business as usual. Congress should read every bill.
And that was a small bite from campaign video that Senator Rand Paul released today. That's right, folks. He is officially running, although he won't formally announce until tomorrow.
Our future can include a road back to prosperity, back to respect at home and abroad. It should include a balanced budget and a simple, fair tax system. It should include a government that protects your rights and your security. It should include a stronger, better, more agile military. It's time for a new way, a new set of ideas, a new leader, one you can trust, one who works for you, and above all, it's time for a new president.
And that was Senator Paul at CPAC back in February, where he got a standing ovation and also won its annual straw poll. In his move to run for president, Mr. Paul has begun to position himself from being a straight libertarian to something closer to a traditional conservative. Today, in the Washington Post article, the observation was made that, quote, there are at least two areas where Paul has moved more in line with the conservative Republican base, somewhat to the consternation of the purists in the libertarian movement, adopting a more muscular posture on defense and foreign policy and courting the religious right. Politico got an early look at the Paul campaign slogan he will reveal tomorrow. And here's what it's called: defeat the Washington machine, unleash the American dream. Now, I don't know if machine and dream actually rhyme, but we'll talk about that in a bit. And oh, by the way, isn't Paul already part of the Washington machine? According to Politico, Rand's top issues will include a flat tax, IRS reform, term limits, privacy, and justice reform. And joining us now is Katrina Pearson. She's a national Tea Party leader and former Texas congressional candidate. Katrina, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Great to be with you.
So Rand appears to be sliding to the right in an effort to be more appealing to traditional conservatives. Is he winning you over?
No, he's not winning me over, simply because he is changing his positions on a couple of things. And I think it's quite obvious to the big L libertarians who are out there, particularly when he backed Mitch McConnell in the Senate race. And I think a lot of people felt like he was sort of making a deal with the devil just to make this run to gain some GOP support. But all in all, I think at the debates, we're going to find out who's true and who's not true, for that matter. I do like the fact that Rand Paul is pitching himself as someone who can reach out and bring more into the base, My concern is who is he going to be pushing away from the base at this point?
Don't most candidates, though, Katrina, move to the right or to the left during a primary and then in the general invariably go more to the center? I mean, isn't Rand Paul just doing what every other politician does when they're trying to win their party's nomination?
Well, he is, and that's what makes Ted Cruz look even better now, because he's the only one so far that hasn't flip-flopped on a position or changed his rhetoric going into his announcement.
Katrina, it's Rick Ungar. You know, I have to say, I really respect your answer because you were accurate in what you said. Now, I've kind of been tracking Tea Party libertarians over the past couple of years, and they, for quite a while, they do like Ted Cruz, as you point out, but they also had a lot of love, I think, for Rand Paul. Are you sensing that a lot of that has evaporated as Paul has taken some positions like supporting $190 billion more in defense spending? Things like that, are they now fully moved away from Rand Paul?
I think mainly the little L's are pulling away now, for that matter. The big L's are going to have a bigger issue with him, considering his support for Mitch McConnell and some of the establishment moves that he's taking now. But there is going to be a divide in the base. But I will say there's always room for a Liberty candidate. This will be the first cycle that I can remember of being excited about having a Liberty candidate on the ballot, whether it be a Ted Cruz or a Rand Paul, and we'll just see which one of the two can bring the whole base together.
Interesting.
Katrina Pearson, Dallas, Texas, thanks for joining us. She is the National Tea Party leader, and again, we appreciate your thoughts. So guys, we don't have a lot of time right now, but let's go around quickly.
Well, I want to challenge some of the premises here.
Sure.
First of all, you're a home state senator from Kentucky. Your fellow senator is going to be Senate Majority Leader, likely. You're supposed to oppose him? That is a guarantee that you're going to get a primary challenge. So obviously that's forgivable. The defense thing, 2 years ago when Rand Paul was calling for defense restraint, ISIS was a JV team, according to President Obama. And $190 billion over 10 years isn't a whole lot of money. And as for courting evangelical Christians, I have yet to see a specific example of a position that Rand Paul has changed regarding evangelicals or religious freedom or anything else.
I think what he does is he tries to avoid the question. He hasn't answered the question about Indiana, for example. He's one of the few who hasn't. On his recent website revamp, he removed immigration altogether as one of the issues. So I think he just tries to avoid things right now. I'll be interested in his answer.
Rick, 10 seconds.
I think what you just said is right. He has a history of avoiding, and this week, when we had major things happening, his whole response was, "We're on vacation. I can't answer."
I went to
question.
Disney World.
Yeah.
They didn't even win the Super Bowl MVP. Anyway, coming up next, an agreement may be set for Iran, but there's a battle brewing in Congress. We'll tell you about it next, only on the Daily Wrap on Newsmax TV. And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. I'm Joe Concha, along with Rick Unger, Heather Hansen, and John Fund. Last week, following the quote-unquote historic, as President Obama put it, deal with Iran to curb their nuclear ambitions while dropping economic sanctions, both Benjamin Netanyahu and members of Congress have been trying to squash the deal. On CNN's State of the Union, the Israeli Prime Minister explaining why he can't live with the current Iran deal.
It doesn't roll back Iran's nuclear program. It keeps a vast nuclear infrastructure in place. Not a single centrifuge is destroyed. Not a single nuclear facility is shut down, including the underground facilities that they built illicitly. Thousands of centrifuges will keep spinning, enriching uranium. That's a very bad deal.
Netanyahu doesn't like lifting the sanctions either.
Secondly, Iran is going to have sanctions lifted, including crippling sanctions, pretty much up front. And that's going to have billions and billions of dollars flow into the Iranian coffers, not for schools or hospitals or roads, but to pump up Iran's terror machine throughout the world and its military machine that is now engaged in conquest throughout the Middle East.
Bibi also saying instead of worrying about what's in the deal, we should be worried about what's not in the deal.
The ending of their ICBMs, their intercontinental ballistic missile programs. That's not in the deal. And those missiles are only used for you. They're not used for us. They have missiles that can reach us, and they're geared for nuclear weapons. And secondly, no one is asking Iran at all in this deal to stop its aggression in the region and its calls to annihilate Israel.
Those are all good points, and I really do have to ask the question, do you think he wears the same blue tie over and over again, or is it just like a selection of like 20 of the same blue tie? One for the day, okay. Anyway, with congressional Republicans working on measures to stop the deal, Netanyahu was asked if he is involved.
I'm not approaching it on a partisan basis. I've talked to about 2/3 of the representatives of the United States, the House of Representatives, and probably an equal number of senators from both sides of the aisle. This is not a partisan issue. This is not even solely an Israeli issue. This is a world issue because everyone is going to be threatened by the preeminent terrorist state of our time, keeping the infrastructure to produce not one nuclear bomb, but many, many nuclear bombs down the line.
And Senator Dianne Feinstein, as many Democrats are, taking exception to Netanyahu's comments.
I wish that he would contain himself because he has put out no real alternative. In his speech to the Congress, no real alternative. Since then, no real alternative.
Well, his real alternative, he says, is more sanctions. What's wrong with that?
Well, it depends on what you believe more sanctions is going to do.
And Mr. Ungar, you've been chomping at the bits
watching
a couple of those clips.
I was so amazed yesterday. I was watching one of the Sunday morning shows, and Senator Lindsey Graham came on. And as you know, I've been saying all along, I am open to be persuaded on this. What I don't want is the usual politics. I want real information. Lindsey Graham went on, it was Face the Nation, and he made the statement that we should keep the current interim deal that we have with them, the one we arrived at in 2013. Because it's been, quote, fairly successful. Back in 2013, Lindsey Graham went on television and called that agreement beyond outrageous. Senator Bob Corker, he went on TV yesterday, said, well, why don't we just keep it going the way it is until 2017, till we have a new president. He actually said of the 2013 deal back when it happened that it was an all-out victory for the Iranians and the worst thing he had ever seen. Guys, if you're going to put it on record and then turn around and pretend we didn't hear it, we're going to call you out. That, more than anything, pushes me back in the direction of the president because these guys are not being sincere.
But,
Heather.
Rick, I really feel like with Senator Corker, he is really trying to take a fair line. He didn't join the letter
Then
of
why
the
didn't
other
he just
senators.
say he was wrong?
But you can change your mind. Sure, you can change your
say
mind.
so, though.
But
Don't pretend it never happened.
But he doesn't. That's not part of the conversation now. We're talking about going forward, and I think he has been completely fair in saying that he's willing to. I'm talking about Senator Corker because Lindsey Graham is taking a more far right position. I think with Senator Corker, he really wants to reach an agreement, and he wants an agreement that has the Congress.
But they blow their credibility.
But who cares? The pact is. But it doesn't matter going forward. Going forward.
I think something has changed since 2013. We've been handed a gift. The Saudis have agreed to supply enough oil to keep the oil price down. That's why the price of oil has gone from $107 a barrel down to around $50. This is killing Iran. If we were to keep up that pressure and at the same time take steps to prevent Iran from refining its oil into gasoline because they have no effective refinery capacity themselves, we might be able to return to the negotiating table in a year and strike a much better deal. But President Obama has decided to jump the gun. I don't think we had to rush to judgment on this. I still don't know the details of the deal, therefore I haven't made up my mind. But I know the sanctions were working and the lower oil price was really working. This deal may be premature.
John, you could be right, and I can accept that you could be right. But even you, I know that you have more of a conservative bent. You have to call out these senators when they disingenuously say something, completely turn around,
Rick,
and
there are
don't
100
even
senators.
acknowledge
They
it.
all are disingenuous. I don't have the time to deal with all of them.
Right, one at a time would take you forever.
Well, just to get you on record, call out these two for what they
All
did.
100 senators have problems with the truth.
Right. And consistency. I mean, things change and they change with those things. But I think right now the idea, first of all, as John said, we don't know the details. So we're still sort of talking in a vacuum because what Iran has come forth as what they say the details are quite contradictory to what President Obama has come forth with.
But I'm sure not going to be listening to these two guys because they're not interested in me being smart.
President Obama is going to be listening to Senator Corker because he thinks that that's the person who's going to help him find a way through this. And I think it's interesting, not only does Corker want 60 days days in order for Congress to look at this. But he also wants the president to make sure that Iran is going according to the rules every 90 days. And I think that that's an important part of this because they have consistently not followed the rules. So we need a better monitoring system.
But you do understand that was the complaint that Graham had back in 2013. He says, what's the point of this deal? Yeah, we're gonna lighten up on the sanctions, and they're gonna lighten up on how they're developing their nuclear fuel. But then he says, but we can't. Well, that's what he said. But we don't trust them. Well, now he's sitting there saying, well, I guess we could trust them because he says this worked out pretty successfully.
That wasn't trust. That was the sanctions. As John said, the sanctions were keeping them so
there never would have been these talks if it weren't for that agreement.
Sanctions for the sanctions.
The sanctions were there then. We lifted part of the sanctions as a result of that.
Outside of Netanyahu, there are some Arab nations also that have a lot of reservations about this, which you wouldn't expect. And actually, 6 of them are coming to the White House, I think, later this week to get debriefed on the whole thing. Report today that the Saudis are actually now pursuing nukes, and obviously they are.
Not surprising.
I would
this is Sunni Shiite.
I would be surprised if they don't even have them. Most probably.
Yeah, that's actually a very.
I mean,
good point.
once you get nukes, you don't announce it to the world.
Right.
The Israelis still haven't announced
they have the money to do it, that's certainly for sure. Anyway, coming up next, Rolling Stone's story about a UVA student getting gang raped by fraternity members turns out to be false. We discuss it next only on The Wrap. Welcome back to the show, everybody. I'm Joe Concha, along with my co-host Rick Ungar, Heather Hansen, and Newsmax TV contributor John Fund. Hey, do you want to know how to not pursue and publish an exclusive investigative story? Just read Columbia Journalism School report on the way Rolling Stone handled its UVA rape story sometime. As you may have heard, back in November, Rolling Stone published an article that alleged a freshman student was gang raped during a Pi Kappa Psi fraternity party in September of 2012. Apparently, fact-checking was not a top priority for the column's author, Sabrina Rudin Erdely. Rolling Stone asked Steve Call, dean of Columbia's School of Journalism, to review what went wrong. His conclusion: the article was, quote, a story of journalistic failure that was avoidable, unquote. Pi Kappa Psi fraternity plans to sue the magazine, but what will Rolling Stone do? And they retracted the article. Finally, it was up online for 4 months after it was actually published. But what about firing the editor, or firing the reporter, or firing the fact checker, or maybe the deputy editor, or firing anyone involved? Nope, not any terminations, not even a suspension. Writer Sabrina Rudin Erdely issued a formal apology Sunday, saying reporting on rape has unique challenges. You know, like interviewing the other side or those that are accused, but the journalist still has to get the responsibility to get it right. I hope that my mistakes in reporting this story do not silence the voices of victims that need to be heard. Oh, please. Not included in that was an apology, you know, to the fraternity accused of gang rape, whom she didn't bother to even speak to, as I just said, prior to publication of the story. Not only is Rolling Stone not taking action against the editors and reporters, they're also not changing the editorial review process that led to the hit piece in the first place. By the way, that was Columbia's recommendation. What the hell are they thinking? So, Jan Wenner, is he in denial? The Washington Post certainly thinks so. And let's see if we have that. Yes, there we go. Oh, not even just denial. It is complete denial by Eric Wemple, who is one of those media writer types. So, John Fund, should Rolling Stone have done something more than simply acknowledge they messed up?
If they're a serious publication.
Which they are?
No, I actually have believed for a long time they weren't. Mm-hmm. I mean, I follow their journalism for a long time. It's pretty biased, pretty sketchy, and pretty far out there. So I think this is of a piece of their normal practices. And if they don't want to fire or suspend anyone, you know, that's what sleazy tabloids do, not serious journalists.
Heather, accountability?
I agree with everything that you just said. Clearly they should have fired somebody. And if this case with the fraternity or other people who are out there who could sue for defamation, and there are others, if those actually get to a jury, this type of thing is the type of thing that really makes a jury angry, that there haven't been any changes pursuant to these recommendations whatsoever.
Can you bring a lawsuit as, in other words, Rolling Stone didn't name any particular individuals at the fraternity. They just said 7 members of. So
including some who were easily identifiable.
Okay.
Well,
so,
and that's a good question, though, because a huge group, fraternity members across the country couldn't sue for defamation, saying you made fraternities look bad. But that chapter, not even across the country, there, as John said, you've got to focus it down, narrow it down to a specific group. But they also talked about, she also talked about in the piece, the 3 friends that allegedly Jackie spoke to who said, well, let's not report this because then we won't be invited to frat parties anymore. She never spoke to any of those 3 friends. They may have a lawsuit as well. There's a lot of different people here who arguably could bring a case against Rolling Stone.
Do you think that no firings happened because that would be an admission of guilt? That, look, since they were fired, obviously something tangible went wrong. I know they admitted they made a mistake, but a firing is something tangible where if I'm suing, I could say, see, you know you're so wrong, you already fired the people that are involved with the story.
I would agree with that, Joe, if the story from Columbia wasn't so bad. I mean, they came out and said, you guys dropped the ball X, Y, and Z number of times. And then to say, well, we didn't mess up so badly we had to fire somebody, that would really be a stretch. It is something that juries, that people in general don't like. If you've made a mistake, there has to be consequences. And if the only consequence is a not so nice article, then it goes back to John's point that you must not take what you do all that seriously.
Stick to music is my advice.
Right. They stepped in this once
They've
before.
done fine with that.
Yeah, yes they have. They stepped in this 2 years ago with the Boston Bomber, and they made him look like a young, dashing Bob Dylan, and they were totally unapologetic about it, and that was their highest selling.
Yeah, it was, and that's
of the year.
That's the interesting part. It was indeed the highest selling. Look, I mean, I actually have a little more confidence in Rolling Stone than my friends here, but I very much take their point. If you simply can't be a serious journalistic enterprise and not weed out people who screw up this bad. You just have to.
I'm going for theories here because the fact that no one was fired or suspended. No, well, because we're having a conversation.
Right.
All right. Do you think that they were so in love with this narrative, right, and this exclusive, that somebody, and it has to be from the top, told all the usual filters to get out of the way, managing editor, deputy editor, fact checker, because I don't see how you fail on all of those levels unless somebody says, I want this story, make sure it happens.
If it does go to a court, you might find out the answer to that question. I'm not so sure. I think it's not that hard to believe that people just, there's almost a measure of you can't believe she would lie about this.
Right.
Yeah,
so they maybe
just
on so many levels that this missed on. I just got to think there's something bigger here. Anyway, potluck time next. This is the Daily Wrap only on Newsmax. And welcome back to the Daily Wrap, everybody. It's potluck time. It's the part of the show where we go around the table and share our favorite stories of the day. Heather Hansen, you always go first.
Thank you very much. Missouri Republican legislator, Representative Rick Bratton, has proposed legislation that would sort of tighten what people who use food stamps, what they can use them for. And he says that he wants to do it based on nutrition, that they get the best nutrition, which I think is a very great idea and something that is certainly worth pursuing. He wants to ban them from using food stamps to get soda, energy drinks, chips, cookies, and then included steak and fish in his list of bans. Now, I agree wholeheartedly with the idea of trying to tighten up our food stamp program. I think that the way to do that is to start with eligibility and make sure that these people are not getting, and there it is, with your energy drink, the definition of an energy drink, and then cookies, chips, energy drinks, soft drinks, seafood, or steak.
Do you mind if I just stop you there 1 second? Yeah. Because I'm sure a lot of people at home are thinking this right now. I get the cookies and I get the chips and I get everything else. When you get to seafood and steak, that's something that I don't know if a food stamp can really get you at least a good porterhouse or the type of stuff that you get.
I think that the idea was Fox did a big piece on a gentleman who was using food stamps to get sushi and lobster, and it made a lot of people very angry because a lot of people think that there's a lot of food stamp fraud. You can argue that point back and forth, and we can't do it within the time that we have here today. Sure. But the idea of seafood and steak has a lot of people upset that people may be using food stamps to get that. I actually take less issue with that. If that's how you want to feed your family and cut back in other ways and use your food stamps that way, that is fine with me. The other aspects of that, the ban on the energy drinks and so forth, I do think if you are using food stamps for optimal nutrition for you and your family, I think that it's okay to have laws in place. A lot of people are taking issue with this and saying that it's up to the people who are using the food stamps what they want to eat. But ultimately, we know that sugar is a main cause of diabetes. The majority of the people who are using food stamps are also probably using a medical insurance that is being subsidized. And so should we be paying them to you drink the soda and then end up with an illness that you then have to pay for. So I think that that part of it is fine. The steak and fish, I can see where you would have an issue with that, because I do think there should be some choice. But I wondered whether you just think it should be free reign.
No, I actually would buy a lot of what you just said. I would highlight, however, that you just made a great argument for the sugar tax. And I have a feeling you're not a fan of the sugar tax.
Well, I'm not for the normal, the everyday person who is not using government money to buy their soda.
But the logic is the same.
There's a huge difference between
but they
public
are,
and private.
But they are, because your argument made the point.
Rick
you said,
would make a great nanny.
Well, wait. They're drinking sugary things. They end up having to get health care. You're right. They get diabetes. But guess what? Even people who are not on food stamps end up costing us all money when they get diabetes.
But they're not drinking the soda on our dime.
But they are ending up on our dime when they have the results of that.
Maybe not.
Well, they are.
We don't know that.
We do know that.
Well,
we absolutely know that. They're going to be 65 someday. They're going to be on Medicare. And if they have diabetes, you and I are going to be paying for it. No getting around it.
I think that when it comes to private money going towards whatever, same thing as smoking and so forth, people have their own decisions to make. However, when you are depending on public monies, those decisions become less in your hands.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying it also supports the sugar tax.
Very good. Mr. Fund, you are second up.
Until the 1950s, Harvard and many other Ivy League schools had an informal quota on how many Jewish students could attend their schools. Apparently, a group of Asian American students now believes Harvard has an informal quota on the number of Asian students who can attend. They look at 27% of Asian students applying and only about 16% being accepted. So they're suing, and they have a new PR vehicle. An Asian student has just come forward saying, I got into medical school claiming I was black, and I had bad grades, bad scores, and I was completely rich. I was the rich kid in my city. And they shouldn't have hired me. They shouldn't have put me into medical school. So I think this suit is going to have some legs, because I think Harvard may not lose the suit, but in the public relations world, it's going to get a black eye.
Yeah.
It's amazing. We were just
by
showing
the way,
on the screen.
that guy is Mindy Kaling's brother,
yeah.
the actress.
Yeah.
Yeah, great argument. And everything you said, I actually agree with. Go figure. Somebody get the date here. I agreed with everything you said.
It's funny.
Goodness, what's happening?
When I was in high school, I had one teacher that actually, I'm not going to say who he is, but he said, you know what, you probably have a better shot getting into some of the schools you're applying to if you just simply say you're Latino. Because Concha is huge, right?
And who is going to contradict you?
No one.
Because they'll be accused of being a bigot.
That's
right. Everybody in Jersey thinks my last name is Italian because it ends in a vowel, but no, it's Spanish. And
you totally could have
that becomes Latino, and then before you know it, I'm a minority.
Right.
And I could get into some other schools maybe. And now just seeing that,
what
was I thinking? I could have gone to Stanford.
I could have changed my name to Hernandez or whatever you want, and I still wouldn't have gotten into Harvard.
Rick Hernandez. Yeah, I just don't.
I don't know that would have gone.
I might have been able to play baseball though.
Pulling that off.
It was Rick Hernandez.
Explain the Jeb Bush. You just made that reference real quick.
So Jeb Bush apparently, in filling out a voter form, he indicated that he was Hispanic, and then he said today that it was a mistake. But a lot of people are making fuss about it, especially given that Elizabeth Warren apparently said that she was an American Indian.
Whoa.
Apparently, she said it for years.
Yeah.
A Florida governor checked off a wrong box on a ballot?
Yeah,
once.
Right, because I'm saying in 2000 that tended to happen with Ralph Nader, right? We got to go. Take a quick break, more potluck, including my own. This is the Daily Wrap, only on Newsmax TV. Yeah, welcome back to Daily Wrap. I'm Joe Conchin. If you're just joining us, we're in the middle of our potluck where we're sharing our favorite stories of the day. Rick Ungar, what did you bring to dinner tonight?
So the Atlanta Federal Reserve tells us today that they are changing their projections for the first quarter of 2015 to show zero growth in the United States. This gets me thinking about what's going on here. What is wrong? You had steady hiring up until this month, very nice levels. You had cheap gasoline, which is supposed to stoke the economy because it powers consumer spending. You have allegedly falling unemployment. You have low mortgage rates, which should be spurring home ownership. All of these good things are happening, and we have zero growth.
When you say growth, is this GDP you're talking about?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they're looking at 0%.
And usually a healthy number is around between 3 and 4?
Well, and we've been kind of chugging along at 2, which is not that exciting, but better than it was, in a recessionary time. So what's going on here? Well, obviously, bad weather does play a role. Some will tell you, actually, the White House was trying to sell the idea last week that it was very much the result of bad weather. It plays a part. I don't think you can blame it all on bad weather. But there is something that people don't want to acknowledge that I think we have to start acknowledging in a very big way. I spent some time yesterday with a friend of mine named Art Bilger, who was becoming a leader in getting the point across, not only to the leadership in this country, but now to all Americans, that we are looking at a situation in 20 to 30 years where technology is going to take over an enormous amount of jobs. I mean, an enormous amount of jobs. What does that mean? You're going to have all of these people who also will be living longer because medical technology keeps advancing in great steps how long we live. What are we going to do with all these people? We are already seeing this take place. And it's fun to blame a president, it's fun to blame a Congress, blame a party, blame whoever you want to blame. But the reality is, we've been hearing this for many years, that the day would come where robots could replace humans. We're there. It's happening. And we have to face up to it, and we have to, here's the big word, folks, educate people to make a living in that environment. We are not doing it. You want growth in this country, you better get serious about education.
So Rick, are you saying also, besides the educational part, that you now endorse death panels?
No, never.
It was just right there.
Death panels were just never real. No.
Right.
I am not. I don't want to kill everybody. I want them to be able to make a living and support their families.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree that the idea of technology taking over more and more jobs is part of the problem. I think there's a lack of confidence that explains those numbers as well, and especially in, we're not going to have time to get into an Obamacare conversation, but people don't know what their healthcare costs are going to be right now. They don't understand it. They haven't wrapped their arms around it, and I think they're afraid to spend any money in fear that they won't have it for when they need it.
I honestly don't think that's it. I think there are other factors, but that could be some part of it.
You know where there could be an economic boom now?
Where?
The villages down in Florida. Because you keep people alive and everybody's getting older.
Well, that's true.
That's the investment we have to make.
They got to have money to pay for their rooms.
Right, good point. I plan on retiring in Del Boca.
Education, baby.
Nice.
Okay, very good.
Education.
Anyway, I guess it's my turn. So, as predicted, by the way, on this network, on this show, on several occasions, I said Kentucky wasn't going to win the national championship, and I was right. They were beat by Wisconsin on Saturday night. Great game, came down to the wire. Rick is pointing at himself. Go ahead, speak.
I have Wisconsin.
You have Wisconsin winning the whole thing in your pool?
Yes, I do.
Oh, okay. Well,
yes, I do.
Very good. So Rick felt the same way as well. Still, Kentucky was heavy favorites to win the whole thing. They were 38-0 going into the semifinal at Indianapolis on Saturday night before things fell apart against a very good Wisconsin team. It looked every bit as good as the Wildcats. And then something happened that always seems to happen in these situations. There were riots in Lexington and plenty of arrests. And hundreds of thousands. Look at that. My goodness. There is, wow. There's nothing really more you could say. I believe it was a Randy Moss jersey being burned for no apparent reason. But yeah, overall 29 arrests, about 1 billion fires, hundreds of thousands of dollars in damage. No one looks terribly upset that the Wildcats lost. In fact, it looks like one hell of a party. But still, here is my rant. Here is my point. How do the police not know this is coming? They're only 4-point favorites. There was a chance they can lose. No one's gone undefeated in a season since 1976. So why weren't the police ready for this sort of thing to happen in a town where it's a bubble? It's only a couple of blocks that you have to basically close off and say, okay, you're taking your party somewhere else. But instead, it happens. And as Rick pointed out, as we were previewing this little segment, it also happens where the winning team is involved as well. We looked it up during the break, and one of the biggest riots of all time was when the Steelers beat the Cardinals for their 6th Super Bowl ring, and there was $200,000 worth of damage, not in Phoenix, oh no, in Pittsburgh. So you get the feeling that this isn't even about sports and winning or losing anymore. This is another reason to party, Heather Hansen.
Absolutely it
They
is.
look like they were partying.
Yeah, but that's, it's unacceptable behavior. I mean, it's causing damage to their own communities. Anytime you talk about riots, whether it be as major as Ferguson or as minor as this, you're causing damage to your own communities, your own
Let's
jobs.
just put this into perspective. Compared with Europe, especially Britain,
Oh,
over
yeah.
football. I mean, our Our rowdy fans are nothing compared to
the
other
soccer
countries.
riots. Yeah, they burned down whole cities. Anyway, when we come back, it's yay or nay. This is the Daily Wrap only on Newsmax. And welcome back to Daily Wrap. First, thank you, all of you who stayed with us throughout this hour despite this mutant virus that I have going. Appreciate it. Anyway, it's time for yay or nay. First up, California Governor Jerry Brown wants to fine his citizens up to $500 a day, among other water-related abuses, for taking long showers. The Democrat made the announcement yesterday on ABC's This Week, saying he's taking the extreme measure only to help his agricultural areas suffering through severe drought. So, Rick Ungar, you take long showers.
Yeah.
Should people be fined for them, given the situation that's going on in California?
Absolutely, yes. And when I'm in California, as I often am, I will not take long showers. This is real out there. This is the real deal, and he's absolutely right taking this kind of action.
It may be real, but it's also crazy. I'm from Sacramento. I'm in the middle of this drought area where I grew up. Much of this affecting the farmers has to do with the Delta smelt, which is a teeny, teeny little fish that frankly is nothing to look at and has its own problems. And the federal government has forced water to be released into the bay to help the smelt for years. Look, I'm all for the environment. I used to be a charter member of the Sierra Club. The farmers, unemployment rate is 35%. People are starving almost in the Central Valley, can't feed their families. I say at some point the smelt has to give way.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that. I'll buy that.
Okay.
But that's not the cause of the problem. But you're right. It's a huge
contributor. It's a
big
part of the problem.
Anyway, yay or nay?
I don't want the governor in my shower. I think people will choose to do it. I would think you would choose to do it. I think people will choose to do it. But
well,
I
they
don't think
tried
he should
that.
be
No,
touched.
but they didn't choose.
Be very offended.
Yeah, and I got to say something. You have to remember, 2 years ago he instituted a voluntary program, and they didn't do it. So no, people don't choose to do it.
Well, I don't.
They think you're going to, so I don't have to.
Either way, I don't want him telling me how long my shower has to be.
Then I hope
take care of the smell.
I hope you don't mind when he tells you you can't drink water.
I'm a yay, not so much for the fine, but shared sacrifice. And quite frankly, I'm done in 90 seconds. I take care of the important parts, and boom, we're done.
This is more than we need to know about.
Yes, Irish Spring, by the way, I use. So, former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg is considering another mayoral run next year. Where? In the Big Apple? No, but as mayor of London, where the current mayor, Boris Johnson, steps down next May. Steve Hilton, a top advisor to British Prime Minister David Cameron, great name, seems to like the idea of Bloomberg in London, saying, quote, his kind of pragmatic problem-solving leadership is exactly what London needs, end quote. It should be noted that in order for Bloomberg to run, he needs to be a citizen of the European Union, and while both his daughters are British citizens, I didn't know that, Bloomberg is not. So, Heather Hansen, Bloomy, for governor of London, yay or nay?
Sure, let him get them to stop smoking and drinking soda and take all of his business there. That's fine with me.
This sounds like a consultant trying to get a client to become rich. Because he knows how much Bloomberg's consultants in New York made when he ran for mayor.
Wow, I wasn't expecting an answer. So are you a yay or nay, by the way, for him running for...
Should he run?
Yeah, should he run?
Oh, this is so ridiculous, I'm not even going to go.
Yeah, okay, so you're a nay. Just say nay.
It's preposterous.
This is another one.
Yay or preposterous?
Right. It's not true, first of all. It was never true. His daughters, by the way, are citizens because his wife was a British citizen. He can't run. He doesn't have the citizenship requirements. He's never expressed an interest in it. Again, I think Fund's got this right. Some consultants trying to push this one for the money.
Okay, and I'm a yay, just to see if he would go 3 terms there as well, and then 6 terms as a governor. Who could just put that on their resume, right? LinkedIn. Anyway, finally, the New York City Council is drafting legislation that would allow all legal residents, who have lived in the city for at least 6 months, regardless of citizenship, the right to vote in city elections. Supporters of the bill say this will help increase voter turnout, as well as refresh local politics and shed light on issues that better reflect the needs of the people of the city. Those opposed say voting in the country is a privilege only for U.S. citizens. Should the Big Apple give non-citizens voting rights? It's yay or nay, Fund.
Look, I'm generally in favor of immigration to this country as long as it's structured and legal. But all of the conspiracy theorists who said Obama was letting in a bunch of people so they could eventually vote, boy, does this give them credence.
Exhibit A, good point. Fund is on a roll.
I couldn't be any more of a nay. It's absolutely ridiculous. The idea is just preposterous.
Okay, you're a yay, obviously.
No, I am.
You
no,
are.
No taxation with that representation. If they're paying taxes in this city, they ought to have a vote.
Wow.
Come on in. Come on in.
So I guess I'll never be a Republican mayor here ever again. Huh? So I still run for Giuliani and Bloomberg.
I'm going to go to
but
London. Yeah.
You're going to go to London and
Yeah.
run. Oh, that's very interesting. So yeah, I'm a nay as well. I'm not as well because Rick was a yay. We got to draw the line somewhere, I believe, and what can you say? So anyway, any home remedies for this cold?
By the way, one quick thing. Do you know the first 150 years of our existence in this country, people who weren't citizens did get to vote?
In a few states and a few
No,
localities.
no. That's now. That's presently.
No,
in
no.
the first 150 years,
wrong,
you could vote.
Wrong.
In most states.
Wrong.
Anyway, the cold. Back to the cold. What?
Gargle with salt water.
Salt water.
Bed rest.
Bed rest.
Sweat
Okay.
it out.
Bourbon or tequila. Tequila kills everything.
Tequila kills everything.
Yeah.
That is true, actually.
Yeah.
Do I have to do the worm thing or no?
No.
All right.
The worm's in mezcal, not tequila.
Panel, thank you so much, Mr. Fun. It was an honor. I appreciate it. That's our show for tonight.
Mr. Fun.
I'm Joe Concha, and that's the way it is.